welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of www.stressfreenow.info. We'd like to welcome back Mike Dell, who's our featured guest today, to continue our discussion on how to make and keep your podcast production process stress-free. Mike describes himself as a tech geek, early adopter, ham radio guy, broadcaster, podcast producer, DJ, graphics guy, web guy, ex-United States Air Force, aviation nut, husband, banjo picker, attempted, tuba player, and all-around good guy. He lives in God's country, otherwise known as Traverse City, Michigan, USA, with his wife, Kathy. Mike has a cat and a beagle and loves living along the shores of East Grand Traverse Bay on northern Lake Michigan with his wife in their 1940s log cabin. Mike has worked in broadcasting, graphic arts, and now in podcasting. He has been with Raw Voice Incorporated, the parent company of Blueberry.com, for 6 years, and he has been podcasting for over 10 years. Mike, we're happy to have you back. Welcome. Audience, welcome.
And welcome to you guys that are listening, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, Michael, great. Thanks for coming back, and we're so happy that you could join us again today. And audience, you are in for a treat because we have Michael Dell, and he is so knowledgeable about podcasting and other things. I mean, he's has an eclectic background, as you could see. But, Michael, I want to start off by just mentioning again how much we appreciate the outstanding job you do there at Blueberry manning the support desk. I mean, you helped us out, and we know that you have helped out so many people, and the feedback must be tremendous. But there's another aspect I just want you to speak to briefly, that you offer some type of consulting service for podcasters where they have different options depending on their experience or desires. Can you briefly describe the consulting service that you offer? I think it was called some type of turnkey podcasting management service where you will handle everything for the podcaster other than the actual recording.
Right, and I do that through podcasthelpdesk.com. That's my own thing, not connected directly with Blueberry. And what I do is there are people out there that just want to record. You know, they just want to record their stuff and send it to me, and they can choose to have me edit out all the ums and you know, all the stuff they don't want in there, or just play it as is. But I'll adjust the levels and all that, and I'll operate their website. I'll post it to their RSS feed, make sure it's in Blueberry or in Blueberry's directory. Also, make sure it's in iTunes and Stitcher and all the other places people go to find podcasts. And I offer that service to except for people that don't want to deal with that. Like I have a deal with a local radio group here where they have interviews with famous people, and when they have one of those, they send me the interview. I edit that into a podcast and post it to their website for them. And that way, they don't have to have somebody that knows how to do RSS and all that stuff. They just pay me to do it, and it works out good for everybody.
Great. So I imagine that really reduces the stress and frustration that many people would feel that there are all these other pieces to the podcasting, as you're saying, that it's not just the recording. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's what people see and hear. But there are all these other pieces like RSS, the editing, sound quality, etc., that you have to take care of. And so that's great that you do that for podcasters.
Yeah, and as I was telling you before, you can podcast, but either you have to learn something or you have to get the checkbook out, because there are technical things to it. Now, it's not super hard and it's not hard to learn, but there's some people that just either don't have the time or don't have the want to learn it. They just want to talk into the microphone and be done with it. And so I offer that service. It's not a super popular service, but for those that do it are very happy.
I'm sure that they would be, Mike, in this day and age, having a breadth and a variety of skill seems to be a basic necessity, but as you said, not everyone wants to learn everything. And I know for myself what has been a source of stress, not particularly in podcasting, but just in doing business today. Each day there's something new to learn. And I remember at one point with some work I was doing with one of our hosting companies that I got to the point, oh, my head was full. I don't want to learn one new thing now.
Yeah, I know how that is.
Exactly, and I think that happens to so many people. You're doing this day to day, 24/7 practically, but for people who come in bit by bit, small manageable bites. Now, Michael, I understand that Blueberry, speaking of new things, has a new directory with lots of changes. What are some of these changes, and how will they benefit podcast listeners, and what issues are the changes meant to fix or resolve? And how are podcasters, listeners, and producers going to be lessening their stress with a new Blueberry directory?
Well, we've had the Blueberry directory for a really long time, but it's been limited to just those podcasts that are, choose to list there. They, or are using our hosting or our stat service. And it hasn't been an all-inclusive directory. Like, iTunes, pretty much every podcast out there is in iTunes. But iTunes caters to just the Apple devices out there and, in a limited way, Windows. So what we wanted to do was include the Android people and other platforms. For instance, Apple only has 20% of the phones out there are iPhones, but yet they're 80% of the podcast listens worldwide. So Android has pretty much 75% market share in the phones, but yet they're only 20% of the podcast listens. So we want to bring in the Android people. And the way we're going to do that is our directory is going to be equivalent to iTunes for Android. But it'll also be open to everybody else, unlike iTunes, which is pretty much limited. So hopefully, that's our main goal. And it's going to be just another, directory, another place for people to find podcasts. And with some of our other features, you'll be able to listen to your podcasts on your TV through the set-top boxes like Apple TV, Roku, Boxy. Even some Samsung smart TVs will have a Blueberry app on there, and you'll be able to get every podcast you want to listen to on it.
So, Michael, I just have to jump in here. Did you say what I thought you just said? Did you just say that Blueberry is going to do the cannonball splash off the high diving board because Android phones are 80% or 75% of the phone market, that Blueberry is now going to take its rightful place in the podcast market? Is that what you just said?
We're trying. That's the goal. Now, how far we get with Android, we don't know.
So just to be clear, because that is very exciting, I actually mind-boggling. I'm just thinking that's pretty amazing. So what you're talking about is that almost the entire universe of podcasts would now be coming to the or at least available on the Blueberry platform. So that would be huge.
Yeah, that's what we're kind of shooting for, because, like I said, the Android people, and as I said in the prior discussions, that Google, who also owns Android, seems to have an aversion to RSS and podcasting. They don't embrace it like other companies do. Even Microsoft has their own podcast app for Windows phones and Windows computers, where Google hasn't done that. So we're going to try and step up to the plate and at least give the Android people equal footing with people that are carrying around iPhones. Our developer team has been working feverishly on that for the last 3-4 months, and they've got the prototype out, and eventually it'll go public.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That is pretty amazing. So, Michael, I want to thank you. That is a mind-blowing announcement. I think some of our podcast listeners are old enough to remember the old Superman show, and Clark Kent would run in and he goes, "Hey, Chief, I have a scoop," right? I think this qualifies as a scoop, and I want to thank you. That is an amazing order of magnitude change in the marketplace, and I'm sure it'll be well received because that has been one of the puzzling things, as you said. So I want to thank you for that, for letting our listeners be aware of the great changes coming from Blueberry, and I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, right. And to start that out, we came out with a service called Subscribe on Android. That's a website, subscribeonandroid.com, and there people can. Podcasters can go in there and put their RSS feed in this in the box, and then down at the bottom download a button to put on their website that will make your podcast accessible to the Android people. Now, if you're using Blueberry PowerPress, that's built right in. You have that on your website now with that Android link. But this service, it's not even branded by Blueberry. It's just called Subscribe on Android, and that allows people that aren't using Blueberry in any way to make a Subscribe on Android button for their own website.
And I'm just curious, since you brought this up, since you guys are the official WordPress plugin for the podcasting with the PowerPress, how has that been received by the WordPress people?
Oh, they love it. They love it.
Okay.
Our customers, anybody that's using PowerPress, we've got nothing but rave reviews on that.
Well, Bob is certainly happy with it, and anything that increases accessibility, this is a win-win on both sides, for listeners and for producers. Michael, Blueberry has so many helpful resource links on their sites, which, just gives a lot of great guidance, especially for new podcast producers. The resource page is really easy to find, and you can work your way around the site. I know when I looked into it, I like the look and the navigation. That's so important to me when I'm doing things. Could you tell us some of the major benefits you have already? But what are the major benefits of using the Blueberry platform to solve your podcasting needs?
We try to make it easy. Well, first and foremost, we want you to promote you rather than promote us. So when you are fully onto the Blueberry system, you're using PowerPress and WordPress on your site, so everything comes back to your site. We don't want you to tell people, hey, go to Blueberry to listen to my show. No. We want you to go to your own website to watch your show or to listen to your show. That's one of our core principles as a company, is to not promote ourselves through your work. We'll help you out as much as possible, and then we want to get out of your way. Whereas a lot of other companies, and I won't name them, try to trap you into their ecosystem. I can think of like SoundCloud, and they're not exactly a podcast hosting company, but SoundCloud, if you're hosting on SoundCloud, everything says SoundCloud on it. The player says SoundCloud. Your address has SoundCloud in it. Your feed address has SoundCloud in it. We don't want to do that. We want you to promote you versus promoting us. And then the resource pages you're talking about, that's our Create site, we call it. It's create.blueberry.com. And we have a section of that site called the Podcast Manual, and it'll tell you everything you want to know about how to do your podcast technically, as far as setting up websites and feeds and about recording and what formats to use and all the different stuff. And we constantly update that. So if I have a lot of questions, say at the support line, I get all kinds of questions, and if I get a bunch of the same questions, we'll make a new page on the Create site about that problem. And that's how it's blossomed over the years into what it is now.
That is so convenient. I know one of the things that I love is on your Explore page. I love when our new podcast comes out and I see my logo there. It's like, oh, it gives me a sense of accomplishment. I really, I don't know. It makes me feel that I built a pyramid this week. You know.
Right. And Michael, I wanted to just segue briefly off of this whole thing with your resources. One of the wonderful things that Blueberry offered when we were first looking into the podcasting, and I think that anyone considering podcasting should check this out. There was a video, and I believe it was by your CEO, Todd, where he talked about how important it is to read the terms and conditions of the whatever podcasting platform you're going to use or wherever you're going to put your material, because many people just kind of wave that off. They say, I'll just throw it up. And I think somewhere on the Blueberry platform is a post with a video talking about it would be in your best interest to really pay attention to the terms and conditions, because unfortunately, some podcast platforms, when you post your podcast on them, you lose control of your content because you signed it away. And that's in their terms of use. And so many people are sometimes startled when you say, hey, well, listen, you're using that platform and you don't own your content anymore. And I go, did you read the terms and conditions? So I just wanted to say that I thought that was one of the really excellent things that Blueberry has as a resource, where it was talked about. And I actually sent that post to a couple of people, and they were asking me, well, why are you bringing this issue up? This is no big deal. And then when they saw it, they said, oh, this is a big deal. And I said, yes, it's a big deal that you spent all this time creating a podcast or an article or anything, and you put it someplace and you gave it away, and you don't even own your own work that you created. So I think that podcasters in particular need to be very careful. And again, it's an extra step. It's more work to read the terms of use for whatever site where you're going to host your podcast.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. One of our team members is a lawyer, and he was very particular about what we put on the site as far as terms of service, and but that was another core principle of the founders of the company was we don't want to own everybody else's content. We want to provide tools and other services to podcasters. Like when they first started, we were selling advertisements for podcasters, but unlike other advertising platforms out there, Blueberry made it clear this is not an exclusive deal. You sign up for this ad campaign, you're only on for this ad campaign, and you can turn it down. You are reading the ads. We don't take any prepackaged ads from people. So if Procter & Gamble come and said, hey, we want to run this 30-second spot on all your podcasts, we would likely turn them down because we want our hosts to read the ads. And we want them to read them in their own words. We don't have, preset scripts. We have talking points. And, we want it to be authentic. That's one thing about podcasting is the independent podcaster, maybe not so much the repurposed radio guys or that, but, the hobbyist and or semi-pro podcasters, the independents, are more accessible than radio people in general and more accessible than celebrities and all that. So we also want it to be more realistic. So, I've got a podcast about podcasting. I'm not going to take ads for some, I can't even think of anything, but I mean, there's things that just don't apply to my audience. So why would I want to be forced to have that ad in my content? But if you go with certain companies, they run pre-roll ads, could be for stuff that has nothing whatsoever to do with your audience. And your audience, A, isn't going to appreciate it, and B, isn't going to be interested in it. But if it's something tech-related, like if, say, Heil Microphones decides to sponsor my podcast, that makes sense because I use Heil microphones, or I would be using Heil microphones. It's something that applies to my audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, Michael, I just have to tell you, I just have to jump in here again. I am sensing a level of understanding and business ethics that this is breathtaking. I have to tell you that, that with everything, when you're reading the news, that when I'm listening, I'm pinching myself while you're talking. I'm saying, did he really say that? Did he really say they turn down ads and that they don't do this and that they ask the hosts and you have an opt-out? And I remember seeing the advertising script where it said Blueberry would present that to you, and then you have the option to say yes or no. And so it's not that you're opted in; it's that you have to opt in. And I think that is all too rare in the terrain, as you know, Michael. That every day there's an onslaught of things where people are opted in automatically, and then you have to be swift enough to click the box in time to uncheck the box. And so I want to thank you, and my hat's off to Blueberry for doing that, because that is an ethical, a wonderful way of doing business. And I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that, and I know there are going to be lots of listeners out there that are going to be happy to hear that, and maybe pinching themselves too.
If you do business the right way, okay, you may not grow as fast as some of these companies that shoot way up and then get bought out by somebody. We're not looking to get bought out by anybody. We're just looking to have a slow, steady business that sustains those of us that are working for it and is a good service for our customers. We're not out to squeeze every little buck out of it and try to make it look good to some venture capitalists. We're a debt-free company. We've never taken venture capital, and we're absolutely independent. So we can do things our way, and we don't have anybody to answer to.
That's excellent, Mike. That's a wonderful position of strength, and being able to operate with that type of integrity and to really be self-directed, I think, is what many entrepreneurs are looking for. And certainly people who are new to podcasting, they may be in podcasting or doing this business just because they can be captain of their own ship with their own standards. And for those of our listeners who may be new to podcasting, Bob and I learned quite a bit from you, and certainly in speaking about something that is, if I could say, one of your pet peeves is the knowing the difference between a podcast hosting platform like Blueberry and simply a podcasting directory. That one of the things that's frustrating to you is when iTunes is referred to as a podcasting platform when it's a directory. So could you just educate our listeners, especially those who are maybe thinking of jumping into podcasting, what are the distinctions of these categories?
Right. Since iTunes is the big 800-pound gorilla in the space as far as directories, and when everybody wants to be in Blueberry or into iTunes, I'll tell you how that works. iTunes. Okay, so think of your podcast as a radio show, and your RSS feed is your transmitter. So basically think of that, your big antenna stick out in the woods somewhere. That's what your RSS feed is, your frequency. So, if you're listening to a radio station that's on 95.2, you have to turn your radio dial to 95.2. To listen to podcasts, you have to turn your radio dial, such as it is, to the RSS feed address. And all iTunes does is makes it easier. iTunes is basically like a radio receiver in that case, and then their directory would be like the on-screen guide you'd have on your cable TV service. It just tells you what shows are where. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But that's really the distinction. A directory such as iTunes, and iTunes is both a directory. It's actually, three things. It's a directory of podcasts. It's actually an application that receives the podcasts, and it's a way for people to discover your podcast. And other directories may not work the same, because there's other apps that catch podcasts, but actually the iTunes store is just like the TV guide. That's how you find podcasts, and then the iTunes application is how you receive the podcasts. And if that, I don't know, I kind of mixed metaphors there, but
it works. We're still with you.
So the thing is, to help the listening audience, can you distinguish between what it is that Blueberry does versus iTunes? Because Blueberry is also a hosting company besides being a directory.
Right, and our hosting basically is we deliver the media from your RSS feed. So your RSS feed goes out and it has links to your podcasts, which, if you're a hosting customer at Blueberry, are hosted on our servers. And the reason you'd want to do that is you try to host it on your own server, it's going to compete with your website for bandwidth. And if you get real popular, your website will go down. So you want to have your hosting separate from your website that's generating the RSS feed. And so we deliver that content. Our directory is a completely separate part of Blueberry, which is just like another TV guide, and there's others out there like that, other directories. Stitcher, for instance, is another popular directory, and it's also a delivery mechanism. They have an app for both Android and iPhones where it pulls from Stitcher and streams the podcast to your phone. Instead of you having to download them, they download it and then they stream it to you. But their directory, the directory portion of their website is just like iTunes Store and just like the Blueberry directory and other directories out there.
So for a new podcaster, Blueberry seems to be a more ideal full-service station, if you will, or a full-service store in terms of the amount of information that you're giving and the services you're giving, that you offer the hosting in addition to the directory, in addition or especially access to yourself and your team in terms of your knowledge in this area and the expertise. For the years that you've been in the business, Mike, you really have the scope of it.
Yeah, and there's other companies out there that are like Libsyn. We mentioned them before. Libsyn is a very similar setup. Libsyn is one of those companies that prefers you use their feed instead of your own, but you can use Libsyn with our PowerPress. See, that's the other thing. Our PowerPress plugin will work with other hosts, whereas some of the other services wouldn't dream of that. What do you mean you're going to use somebody else's service to use our thing? And no, we leave it open. It's wide open. It's open source. If somebody else wanted to modify PowerPress and put out their own plugin, they could do that because it's open source. And but we allow Libsyn or I can't think of any, like even SoundCloud. If you wanted to host on SoundCloud, you could still use the PowerPress plugin to power your podcast through your own WordPress. It's harder. I mean, it's a lot easier with Blueberry because you instead of having to upload over at one place and then come over and make a post on another place, you just do everything from your WordPress dashboard. That's our advantage because we own it. but it can be done, and we allow that. We encourage that. If you're already a Libsyn customer and you're happy with them, then you can still own your own content. You can still use the Blueberry PowerPress to generate your feed and all as well.
Mike, I just want to go back just a little ways. You mentioned the Roku TV set-top box and some of these other TV set-top boxes. My understanding is the Blueberry, anyone that has a podcast on Blueberry right now can actually hear the podcast on the Roku TV set box. Is that correct?
Yes, it's through the Blueberry app, and that Blueberry app on Roku. So your listener would have to download the Blueberry app on their Roku, and anything that's in our directory is available on that app if the show qualifies. We do have a qualification, but it's fairly simple. You have to have, I think it's 7 episodes. You have to have made one in the last 30 days. They have to be of sufficient quality, especially Samsung Smart TV. They're pretty picky about the quality. But as long as you go through that little qualification form on Blueberry.com, you will be included in our app.
Okay. And is it easy for someone that has the set-top boxes to find the Blueberry podcast episodes?
Yeah, you just go to the Roku main menu and then search for Blueberry with no E's.
Right.
And that works the same on the Boxy box. It works the same on Samsung Smart TV, and I think there's a few others. I don't have the whole list right in front of me.
Okay. All right. That's wonderful. That's very exciting. So that's great. Michael, I want to ask you this question. You have a new book coming out on podcasting. Can you tell our audience how you came to write that book and what lessons you want the readers to internalize after reading your book? And also, if you could just let our listeners know when your book might be available for sale and whether or not you'd have some special offer or something or discount coupon to available to listeners.
Okay, yeah, the book is called The No BS Guide to Podcasting. And the reason I picked that title was I want it to be a relatively short book that'll just outline, here's the way I would suggest you make a podcast. It's not the only way, but it is a way that will work and has been tested and everything, and I want to make it as simple as possible. So, I don't want to go into, what's the difference between the Heil PR40 microphone and the Shure SM58 microphone. We don't need to discuss that. Just make a decent sounding recording and make it into an MP3 file. Here's how you do that, and then here's how to make your website, and here's, I want to make it pretty much simple. There's going to be a checklist in there, basically, and if you go through all the lessons and check off the check boxes as you do them, at the end of it, you're going to have a fully functional podcast and website. And, I want to get away from all these arguments that, seem to happen amongst podcasters, what mic's the best and what website's the best and what hosting company's the best and all that. That's kind of the Ford Chevy argument, And I just want it to be, okay, this may not be the only way to do it, but this is the way that works for me, and it works for thousands of podcasters, and here's how you do it. And, I don't want a lot of fluff in there.
So Michael, on just on that note, what I was thinking is that anyone that's new to podcasting, they're faced with a slew of choices, and one of the most important choices they have to make is where to host their podcast. So can you just briefly outline like a short checklist of things that a person has to take a look at when they're deciding about where to host it, and then the free versus paid podcast hosting options?
Okay, well, if it's free, you can count on that the company that's offering free, either you're the product, they're going to sell it to their advertisers, and they're going to somehow manipulate your show to put their their advertisers in front of your audience. So, as somebody once told me, if a service is free, then you're the product. So I never trust a free podcast host. The second thing, that I look for in a hosting company, and I can think of three right now. That's Blueberry, Libsyn, and one other that follow these rules. And these rules I got from a good friend of mine, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. But don't mess with my file. If I upload an MP3, I want that exact MP3 to go back down to my listeners. I don't want you adding anything. I don't want you modifying anything. And, I just want it to be what I upload is what gets downloaded. Second off, charge me something, because, as I said, free is a lousy business model. I want you to be around. So charge something. It's not free to host. So, if you're offering it for free, you have ulterior motives. And the third thing that that I look for is the ability to generate my own RSS feed if I want to. Even Blueberry, we can generate an RSS feed that comes right from the Blueberry website, and we do offer that as a service. We don't encourage it, but if somebody wants to do that, they can. Same with Libsyn, they generate an RSS feed, but you can also have the option of generating your own, and that's the three things that I definitely would say. If you're to host your media, to do that. And then, the fourth thing is basically, we want you to have your own website. We want you to have your own .com website or .info or .whatever, but your own domain name. And that's where you should focus your marketing. Because you look at discovery of podcasts, Google's probably the number one discovery engine for podcasts. If you don't have a website, how's Google going to know about you?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that brief checklist. The 3 rules by Michael Dell. I like that.
Well, I won't take total credit for it. A good friend of mine, Dave Jackson, came up with a similar list. I think he's got 4 or 5 different things, but those are the 3 big ones.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So as we wind down towards the close, Michael, let me ask you this question that, we have so many things in common, and one of them being that we both play the tuba, and that's a great instrument. And I understand that, like my wife and I, you're also passionate about travel, and that you recently launched a new travel website, travel podcast site. So I think the name of the site is Traverse City Podcast. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that travel site, and what the benefits of checking out your site might be?
Yeah, the Traverse City Podcast is my dipping my toe in local podcasting. I live, of course, in Traverse City, Michigan, which is, as Michiganders like to do, if you hold up your left hand and look at the back of your left hand, I'm right in the bottom of the pinky. But it's a very touristy town. We have wineries around here, and the cherry industry around here, and we have a great film fest that comes here. We're a real foodie town. So my wife has been in the hospitality business for 22 years, and she's real passionate about restaurants and and that kind of the foodie aspects of things. And since we're in a foodie town, we decided we'd start a podcast for one, for tourists that are thinking about coming to Traverse City, and for people that grew up here and have to live somewhere else, so they can keep up on what's going on around this area. So it's kind of a travel site and kind of a local site, kind of aiming at the tourists, but also in the wintertime up here, we have a lot of snowbirds that go somewhere else. So, that would give them a way to keep track of what's going on up here in Traverse City.
That's great. So for listeners, if you considering going to that part of Michigan, and I have to admit, Michael, that's the first time I'm hearing that term, Michiganders.
Michiganders.
Say it again.
Michiganders.
Michiganders, okay, that's my first time, and I imagine I'm not the only person, so I'll have to, since I know we know a few people from Michigan, we'll have to get their pronunciation and then get back to you. So listeners, the website address for Michael's new travel website is http:// TraverseCityPodcast.com. So that's TraverseCityPodcast.com. I think Christine does that better. She just gave me the face. I should have said the name first and then. But Michael, as you said, those are the things that happen in podcasts, so it's real, right? So I want to thank you for being our guest today, Michael. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. And,
yeah, Michael.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Yes, and we definitely will take you up on the any time, and we'll give Bob a spelling test.
That's all right.
Mike, we really appreciated all the information that you shared with us, and especially telling us how to locate Traverse City for those of us who didn't know where it was or how to locate it. How can our audience and our listeners contact you or learn more about what you do? We know about the Traverse City Podcast.com site. What's the best way for our listeners to contact you, Mike?
Contact me personally. I also have a personal blog and also a podcast over at MikeDell.com. And that's my, I call that my podcast about nothing. Every once in a while, I like to flip on the mic and just talk. And if it doesn't fit into podcasting or doesn't fit into Traverse City tourism, then I flip on the mic, and I've done 200 and some episodes over there at Mike Dell's World. And it could be anything from music to me complaining about something, or, who knows. It's not something I really push, but that's usually the best. Anything that I'm doing will be posted over at MikeDell.com at some point.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much. Audience, if you'd like to get in touch with Mike, just contact him at his site, MikeDell.com. That's MikeDell. Michael, we want to thank you again for being on the show.
And I'm sure we'll be doing this again.
Yeah, Mike, when I was listening to Christine mention that we now know where you are in Michigan, I was looking at the back of my hand, and so instead of seeing Michigan, I was thinking about the other Mike that I know, Mike Green. When you mentioned the name of your book, the name of his book was My Boring Life, and he has had anything but a boring life. And so we'll have to introduce the two Mikes and two Michaels at some point. In fact, we know quite a few Michaels, and so this has been so enjoyable. So, Michael, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
Well, as I said before, if you're interested in podcasting, educate yourself. There's lots of resources out on the internet, and get an idea and go with it. Just start. The first step in anything is just start. And and the topic of your podcast series is stress free. Sometimes it is stressful to get in front of the microphone and talk, and there's no real reason to be, because, with a podcast, if what you recorded is lousy, then don't post it. Record another one until it's the way you want it. And so there's no reason to be nervous. Nobody's listening until you let them. But, if you've got something to say, get out there, just start a podcast.
Wow, that is great advice, Michael. That is just great advice. And listeners, especially from the standpoint that the podcasts are recorded, and if you don't like something, you can edit it out, or as Michael just said, you just don't publish it. And so, Michael, I thank you so much. I think that's a key pearl of wisdom. So, audience, I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank you again, Michael, for being our featured guest today. And I want to thank our audience for listening, regardless of wherever you are and whatever time zone you are. We've been surprised that some of the places that we found out that people are listening, pretty far away on the other side of the world. So we welcome and look forward to receiving your comments about our show. Please let us know if there are topics you'd like to see us cover, or if there is a guest you'd like us to invite back. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. And remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us and learn how you can get control of your schedule, including easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Again, that's 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and your first session is absolutely free. Call today to schedule your appointment. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of www.stressfreenow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.